Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to wait a minute or so to see that we can get everybody in. We've got a large audience today and it takes a bit to get that going on. So we'll get started in a minute. Meantime, that's my bike. I tried to get a free picture, but you know how that is. So I had to go out in the garage and take one last night. I was going to mention that 60 Minutes thing that they did on Sunday, and it was all about the electric bikes and how the rate of failure and fires is higher than people are comfortable with. And that if you didn't catch it and can re-see it, that's fine. This is my battery for that bike. It came to me with dents in it, and the company wanted me to just mail it back. Just put it in a box and mail it back. We'll give you a new one. So I reported them to DOT. How are we doing? Do we have people in? Are we ready to go? Because otherwise I'm gonna keep telling stories.
Looks like 89
Right
have
on.
gotten in.
Okay, here's another one. My a friend of, okay, there's a county that had a battery fire. It was an e-bike battery. And after that fire, they decided to move all their battery storage outside to a shed. It got broken into, and people took all the large format batteries and left all the little ones. So there's a lot of harvesting, cell harvesting going on out there, and it makes me nervous. But I thought it was interesting. And then DOT said that people routinely steal the batteries out of the cell phone tower buildings. So usually they're just a little building at the base and it's out in the middle of nowhere, and they have backup power in there, and those are getting stolen as well. So it's interesting times, huh? Now what are we up to, Brandon?
94. So I think
Right on.
It's steadily adding one every so often. So I
Okay.
think it's good to start.
All righty, well, let's get started. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here and attending the webinar. I'm Jennifer Volkman from the Pollution Control Agency, and I'm the statewide program coordinator. And I have been a member of NAHMMA for probably 25 years, and I've been on the board for almost half of that. I decided it's time for new kids. So anyway, but this webinar series was originally planned and put together by EPA's regions 5 and 7, and they did most of the work. EPA was going to host them, but we ended up getting the opportunity to do it here from NAHMMA, and it's a really good fit for our organization because we focus on some work with the household programs and VSQG collection programs. And this fits right in with the issues everybody's having with battery collection, the volume that's coming in, the increased number of damaged and large format batteries. It's really a challenge. So we have membership from public and private. Everybody's welcome. We collaborate, and it's really nice to have people to work with. The broader the group, the more robust things turn out, in my opinion. Up here, I think in the corner is a battery graphic that I believe that Samantha's group helped us develop. So, and she's one of our speakers today from the Recycling Partnership. So we do a lot of the things that an organization does, recognize people. There's some of our awards up there. Oh, doesn't have my name on it. So we encourage you to check us out, look around the website, and what else did I want to say? NAHMMA's been, I mean, for me, NAHMMA's been an invaluable resource. I have met so many people through networking. I can call when I need help, when I'm working on a hard issue, and that's just been invaluable. I also actually learned to do presentations through NAHMMA. There wasn't a lot of opportunity to do them through the Pollution Control Agency, and I used to have anxiety attacks, and they were not good. But this is a good group to be in front of. They're very supportive, and I appreciate that. We have an annual conference, and so I just want to put that up there, and encourage you to check it out. We work hard, we play hard. It's all good. we have a good time. It's a good group. And with that, I will move now to our moderator, Sarah Murray from, oh, I got to figure out how to get out of the presentation mode. There it is. And she will be our moderator for this session, and she'll take it over. So welcome, Sarah, and thank you for all your help with this.
Thanks, Jennifer. Can you go to the next slide?
I can. That's right. I can't go out yet. Oh, for crying out loud. I hope you don't see this mess on my screen.
Nope, we just still see
All
the
right,
slides.
here we go. Sorry.
Okay, yes, thank you. I'm Sarah Murray. I'm the coordinator for the Electronics Recycling Product Stewardship Program in Wisconsin, which we call eCycle Wisconsin. And as Jennifer mentioned, a group of us in mostly the Midwest had done the initial work to plan this series. We're really excited about it. Obviously, the battery issue just keeps getting more and more attention. And so we've put together a lineup to try to address some different pieces of it. And obviously we can't cover all the details, but hopefully this series of webinars that we have planned and that NAHMMA and the National Stewardship Action Council are hosting will help us expand the conversation and also expand awareness. So you can see the lineup here of the other webinars that we have scheduled, and you can register for them the same place you did this one if you haven't already, if you're interested in any of these other topics. You can go to this next slide, Jennifer. Okay. So to start off our series, we're going to focus on battery and battery containing device collection. And this could be at a site that's trying to collect these. It could be at sites that aren't intentionally collecting electronics and batteries, but are getting them in. Could be a site that's trying to collect certain types, but is starting to get some of these bigger e-bike batteries or other things like that. So we're going to talk through a lot of these issues. We have 3 really great speakers to touch on different aspects of it. Chris Bland with Brown County Port and Resource Recovery, who is I've heard him speak a number of times being in the same state, and he's really become an expert on the Department of Transportation rules for shipping batteries and how they apply to his household hazardous waste collection facility. And so he's going to talk about this from the perspective of a facility and give us an overview, a brief dive, because there's a lot more detail out there. And I'll share some resources for those of you who want more details on the USDOT requirements as well. After that, Joe Bittner with Call to Recycle, which is one of the, I would say probably the leading organization collecting rechargeable and other types of batteries. And so he's going to talk about some examples of how programs and products that they have, and I know he'll kind of touch on the fact that there's others out there as well, but what you can do to meet the requirements and safely collect batteries. And then finally, Samantha Longshore with the Recycling Partnership is going to talk a little bit about their customer outreach resources or resident outreach resources and research they're doing into some of the most effective ways to get messaging out, because a big part of this issue is consumer awareness, just knowing where to take these batteries and how to safely manage them. And I believe, Jennifer, I have it correct that the recording and all the presentation slides will be available on the NAHMMA website for about 6 months after today's webinar. Is that correct?
That is correct. And I had that on a slide, but neglected to note that. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to our speakers in just a moment. Please do use the chat and the Q&A features in Zoom. I think most of us are familiar with it, but if you're not, down at the bottom of the screen, you can use those to put in. I would say, to the best that we can, maybe let's try to use the Q&A for questions and chat if folks have resources to share, which we certainly encourage, because I know there's probably a lot of folks on this call that have their own great resources and examples as well. So I'll be keeping an eye on that for any burning questions during the presentations, and then we should have a good amount of time for some Q&A at the end, and definitely encourage lots of questions. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Chris. Chris, are you ready?
Yes, thanks, Sarah.
Mhm.
Okay, we all know that battery recycling is important. If you're in the waste sector, you hear stories about fires in transfer vehicles, in landfills and recycling facility, recycling tip floors, all due to batteries and battery containing devices that catch on fire. So when you, as a battery collection site, when people ask you, do you recycle batteries? You know, and we say yes, but it's not quite true. I mean, it's kind of semantics, but it does make it is important to kind of be more specific. We don't recycle batteries. Technically, we collect and store batteries, and then we offer batteries up for transportation. It seems like a small detail, but it does mean a lot. So you have universal waste rules, which many of us know about, and then most people are not aware of the DOT rules, because if you do not operate a HHW program, you don't know what you don't know until you know it, and there's no reason if you are not an HHW program to be exposed to the DOT rules. So we don't technically recycle batteries. We collect and store, and then we offer them up for transportation. So what do these rules say about batteries and battery collection programs, and how do they apply? So for universal waste rules, actually I'll do a caveat here, if you can see my cursor or not. My presentations, I will mention to cite some sources, some regulation guidance, and I'll also include QR codes. The one on the left is for the state of Wisconsin, NR 673, and then the federal ones on the right. So you can either search the regulation citing, or you can take your smartphone out and grab the QR code, and it'll take you right to the regulation that I'm referring to. So for universal waste rules, not all batteries fall under universal waste rules, like alkaline, because not all batteries are considered hazardous waste. However, all batteries will fall under the DOT rules. So generally speaking, for default to abide by the universal waste rules, containers that you collect the batteries need to be compatible with the waste that you're collecting. They need to be rigid, need to be labeled as universal waste batteries, used batteries, or waste batteries. I do recommend you stay away from waste batteries, especially if you are a HHW program for household hazardous waste, because then there could be confusion between a universal waste and a hazardous waste by using the waste battery verbiage. You need to have an accumulation start date on the containers, and those containers need to be removed off-site for 1 year and be able to demonstrate that that is happening. And also there are employee training requirements in those regulations. So universal waste rules allow you to do certain things with batteries. Most of us are from the waste industry. And the three important ones that apply to us are the sorting batteries by type, which is going to be very important once we start talking about DOT rules. Mixing battery types in one container, that is allowable. It is not preferable. It's only beneficial in the short term to be able to comply with the universal waste rules, but in the long term, it's detrimental. And then removing batteries from consumer products, that allows you to do that. And that is a gray area if you are even able to remove those batteries, and we'll discuss that shortly. So next set of rules that would apply to collection programs are the Department of Transportation, or the PHMSA, the Pipeline and Hazardous Material Safety Administration, those regulations. So when we talk about the DOT rules, we come to a roadblock right away. There are some items that are forbidden to be transported on roadways, and when you talk about DOT rules, when I talk about them, it's more applies to roadways. I won't get into airline or vessel. But batteries are considered an electrical device, and electrical devices which are likely to cause sparks or generate heat are actually forbidden to be transported unless they're packaged in a manner that prevents that from happening. So hearing this, the logical next question is, so which batteries do cause the problem, and how should they be packaged to prevent anything bad from happening? And then the DOT rules, they have a table, which is a guide that will tell you, they'll provide all that information. It's the 172-101 table, and it has anything listed in that table is considered a hazardous material that is regulated by the DOT. There's a few entries here that I have. The dry batteries, which applies to nickel metal hydride, nickel cadmium, and alkaline batteries. And then the lithium ion batteries in equipment, lithium metal batteries, and then lithium metal batteries that are containing equipment. I highlighted the important information here, the proper shipping names, the identification numbers of those materials, special provisions. We're going to highlight this 130, and then packaging exceptions. All the rest of it, if there's a number that does numerical number without a letter, it applies to all modes of transportation, but the only thing that really applies to the vast majority of batteries, like battery collection programs, would be the 130 and the 185. So looking at the batteries dry sealed, again, applies to the alkali, nickel metal hydride, and nickel cadmium. The 130 special provision basically states that terminals of rechargeable batteries and alkaline batteries that exceed 9 volts need to be covered to prevent dangerous evolution of heat, short circuiting, or damage to terminals. So if your contractor requires that to happen, this is where that requirement. If your contractor requires batteries, terminals of batteries to be taped, that is the origination of that request. And technically, it is not the request of your contractor. It is the expectation on you by the DOT as the offerer of hazardous materials to follow that provision in order to safely offer that material for transportation, so they can be transported to a consolidator or to a recycler. For lithium ion batteries, all DOT rules apply. There are some relaxed requirements if you are shipping those batteries off for recycling. You can be exempted from DOT labeling and marketing, placarding, some shipping paper aspects, the full DOT training requirements, and emergency response aspects, if you meet certain criteria, and those criteria are battery size, packaging, and hazard communication conditions. So what are those conditions meaning? When you talk about size of batteries, you don't mean the physical size, it means the chemical, the electrical capacity of the battery. And for lithium metal batteries, this is for the total amount of size of battery that you can transport on roadways. Lithium metal, the max is 25 grams per battery. For lithium ion, which this would apply mostly to, is 60 watt hours per cell, or 300 watt hours per battery. And the watt hours is the amp hours times the voltage of the battery. So that requirement has to be met. The packaging, batteries have to be in inner packaging. DOT does say fully enclosed in packaging, so not tape, not or anything like that, per how it's written. But I mean, we all do it. We all use bags or tape, and that's acceptable as long as it protects the battery from, the dangerous evolution of heat and sparks, and protects terminals. Each package must withstand a 1.2 meter drop test. That is highlighted in comparison to the universal waste rules, where that just lists a rigid container. They do have some performance requirement in the DOT rules. And yeah, so most people, like Brown County, we just use UN approved containers, so that complies. We know what that complies with that. And each package cannot exceed 66 pounds gross weight. So that's the weight of the package and the material inside the package. The third requirement is the hazard communication. Each package that you ship out needs to have the lithium-ion batteries forbidden for transport aboard aircraft and vessel. That marking, and also there is a battery marking that is required. That's in the center here. These little asterisks, the first top asterisk indicates what type of battery you are shipping. So those UN identification numbers in the 172.101 table, that's where you can get that UN number from. And then the two asterisks there is a telephone number for additional information that they can, anybody can get that information in case there's an accident. You need more information on the packaging. There is a proposed rule by the DOT that is proposed to be passed at the first of the year, which would eliminate that requirement. But until then, that is required. Another rule change happened this year. This marking, they actually put a minimum size requirement of that marking. And on shipping papers, if you use shipping paper, there has to be noted on that shipping paper what those batteries are being transported for, if they're being transported for recycling purposes, or if they are damaged. So many of these rules that we discussed are the same rules that will apply to a package that you will receive on your doorstep from like Amazon for any equipment that any gadgets that you may purchase. So there's comparable. It all comes from the same place. When it comes to battery collection, Brown County separates batteries into 4 different categories. Individual small, again, small meaning the less than 300 watt hour rating. Battery containing devices, individual large batteries, or those batteries that exceed 300 watt hours. And then damaged, defective, or recalled, or DDR batteries. So we'll go through how Brown County abides, how it applies the universal waste and the DOT rules to those categories. So listed here, pictured here is our battery store collection area. The 2 gray bins in the middle are the bins that if we have a large material coming into our facility, our HW facility, we will store the batteries in there if we don't have time to get to them, to be sorted out and taped and for DOT transportation. So that ability to mix batteries is only beneficial, in my opinion, to comply with the universal waste rules. We do use packaging. We have some box of bags here from Uline. We do have rubberized spray that we use to spray recessed terminals on batteries, and then we also use tape. And pictured here above each container is the different information on how the drums need to be marked, how they need to be taped. And as you see here, we separate our small batteries into alkaline. We mix our nickel metal hydrides, separate all lithium metal, separate lithium ion. We do separate all lithium polymer batteries, even though they're the same as lithium ion, only due to the fact that lithium ion are more likely to be damaged in transportation. So we separate those out in order to get an extra eye on them. And then we have damaged batteries. So this is how we set up our alkaline batteries, our universal waste label, our non-haz waste with a shipping name of batteries dry sealed alkaline in a 30-gallon polys. We used to use 55-gallon drums, but the weight of those drums tended to exceed 700 pounds, which most of our employees could not move. So we dropped the size down to 30-gallon. Similar with nickel metal hydride, except for we use the shipping description of battery dry sealed NOS used NiCad and nickel metal hydride. Lithium ion batteries, we use a 12-gallon pail, and we have found out that size, using that size, we tend to get right around that 66-pound maximum weight. Anywhere from probably 62 to 68. So that helps us visually meet that size requirement. So we have the universal waste rule, waste label, satisfy that requirement. Shipping name of waste lithium ion, that's ion. The air transportation requirement, and then the battery marking with the 3480 lithium ion. And then we would end up putting our facility number right here. Internally, we do have a drum number that we use to track all of our containers that go in and out of our facility. And similar for lithium polymer batteries, it's the same requirement. Lithium metal batteries, we use a 5-gallon pail for the same reason. They're more dense. So using a 5-gallon pail, that will ensure that we don't exceed that 66-pound limit. The marking now has a 3090 UN number, but everything else is the same except for that marking. All right, battery containing devices. That is gray on purpose because this is a gray area. Lithium batteries by itself are considered a universal waste. What is a lithium ion battery if it is inside a device? Is it no longer a universal waste? Should battery containing devices be considered a universal waste? Brown County and a Wisconsin organization called ARO, Associate Recyclers of Wisconsin, since the DNR has opened up its universal waste rules in order to include aerosols and antifreeze, we are proposing that, suggesting that battery containing devices should be considered universal waste because the location of the battery does not prevent those characteristics. If it's an individual battery or in a device, it's the same hazard. So we put our battery containing devices in QBR boxes. I feel this is our best practice for our facility. So we create a universal waste label. There is no requirements on this label of size and anything like that. Use batteries, accumulation start date, satisfy the DOT rules. We have the forbidden for transport. And then we did have to make these markings 3481 lithium ion batteries in the device. This is a placard size, as we feel that was the importance to abide by the DOT rules when it comes to bulk packaging. As you can find through that QR code, the weight does not apply to battery containing devices, the max weight. And also a benefit to this is that many of the electronics recyclers in Wisconsin do have requested that battery containing devices be separated out from other electronics due to the high numbers of battery fires that they were getting in their recycling facility. So all those coming into play, I feel this is best practice. It segregates it out for the recyclers. It communicates the hazard in transportation, and just like mercury containing devices as universal waste, I feel battery containing devices should also be viewed as universal waste. So this is all we feel is the best way to go about doing that. Third category is individual large batteries. What the speaker mentioned earlier is the e-bike batteries. The one below here, most newer batteries will have the watt-hour rating right on the battery. So that e-bike battery is 499 watt-hours, which exceeds 300 watt-hours. So this does not qualify for the small battery exemptions. And a lot of the Eagle batteries for lawn care also exceed that limitation. So these large batteries, you might be able to abide by the hazard communication and the packaging requirements, but obviously you're not going to be able to check off on the size requirements. So because of this, all those exemptions that you did have when it comes to DOT labeling and marking, packaging, shipping, and now the full DOT training requirements, when Mark can argue that those should apply to all the people that collect batteries anyway. And the emergency response aspect for a 24/7 emergency response number on shipping papers, that would apply. And our fourth category would be the damaged, defective, and recall batteries. All the factors of that we have concerns on those, the on-site safety. They have elevated DOT packaging requirements of internal, external packaging need to be, I believe, X-rated packaging. They're packaging 1 rated packaging. The transporter you would have to have their hazardous material endorsement on their licensing. And after all that, you still need to have an outlet for disposal. So we use the Call to Recycle DDR kits, damaged, defective, recall batteries. Although they're a little bit more expensive, it addresses all those 4 concerns that we have in collecting batteries. And they've gone through the process of requiring a DOT special permit in order to allow those kits to be used. So once all that is applied, you collected them, you stored them properly, you prepare them how they should be for the hazardous materials to be transported and received by a transporter. So now they're ready to be shipped to the actual recycler or consolidator batteries.
Thank you, Chris. So I think for participants, you're able to use the Q&A feature. So if anybody does have questions, you can go ahead and put them in. Otherwise, Joe, if you want to start getting your slides up, we can get ready to move on. So yeah, if you do have any questions for Chris on his presentation, go ahead and put those in the Q&A. And then a couple of people asked about this being available. It is being recorded, and the recording and presentations will be available. I put in the chat the link to the NAHMMA webpage with the registration for these webinars, where I believe they'll be posted when ready. And let's see. Chris, I think you can probably see the Q&A too, but it looks like we have a couple questions in there. Someone's asking if we can provide contact information for speakers. Yeah, I can put that in. I think it'll be in a lot of their slides too. And then a reference question. Chris, maybe you can see a question. There's a reference document. Question about whether a reference document has been created. I think there are a lot out there, but if you, and I know there were a lot in your presentation, if you want to talk about that at all.
I can add a little to that as well.
Okay.
I do get this Consumer Product Safety Commission recall notices. If they have a battery recall, I look on the website and I contact them to see what they're telling people to do with those. I contacted them a couple of weeks ago because I didn't see the right things. And I sent a message to the person working on that project. He reported back within an hour that he had informed them that they had to comply with DOT regulations. And what I'd like to do is work on a primer even for them, so that when they get have a recall, they can tell people the correct thing to do. That's all.
I wouldn't have any more than to add than that. I was going to say, a consumer protection report, federal or state specific ones. So I wouldn't have anything more to add when it comes to recall batteries.
I don't think that household hazardous waste should have to collect those. So I think that's a manufacturer responsibility. So that's what we're working toward with that.
Except for many federal sites will volunteer HHW programs to be the source to collect these materials, unfortunately.
Oh, we got to fix that too. I'm gonna work on that stuff.
All right, well, please do keep putting questions in, and I'll put the speaker contact info in like was requested, but I think we'll keep moving now to Joe Bittner from Call to Recycle. And Chris mentioned a few of the resources, but Joe will be able to talk about their long experience dealing with batteries of various sizes and in various conditions, and I'll hand it off to Joe.
Sarah. Yeah, Chris had great information there, a really good summary of the DOT regulations and what it looks like from the perspective of a collection site. And ordinarily, I would say it is a tough act to follow, but I think actually the information is going to fit well together. I'm going to talk more about from, I guess, a higher level, just in terms of, what we're seeing as issues in the industry, and then give you some perspective on some solutions that not just Call to Recycle, but a number of companies out there provide to make it a lot easier in the day-to-day operation of a collection program for batteries, that address some of those requirements and hurdles, to be fully DOT compliant. So thanks again to Sarah and the team for the invitation to speak here on battery recycling. My name is Joe Bittner. I'm the South Regional Program Manager for Call to Recycle. So basically, I manage all of our customers on the southeast and kind of eastern side of the US. And I've been with Call to Recycle for 10 years and in the battery industry for a little over 15 years now. And so I think a lot of you are probably familiar with Call to Recycle, but just very briefly, Call to Recycle is a 501c4 nonprofit. We were set up in the early 90s by the battery industry. So companies like Sony and Saft and Panasonic decided to come together and form a nonprofit at the time that states were starting to pass EPR, extended producer responsibility laws. So these laws basically say that if you're a company and you sell a certain type of product in their state, the state wants you to have an approved recycling take-back program for the customers to use. And the battery industry decided, rather than each company set up their own collection network and have hundreds of different programs, they said they were going to form a nonprofit and have that nonprofit go out there and establish a collection network and then sell access to that to all the different brands that sell rechargeable products. And so that was the Rechargeable Battery Recycling Corporation, or RBRC, that you might still see on, through the 3 chasing arrows in the form of a triangle on a battery. Like if you look at a cordless tool battery, you're going to see RBRC and then a 1-800 phone number. That's the Call to Recycle program. That's what we're known by now, Call to Recycle. So for over 25 years, we've operated, many thousands of public drop-off locations throughout the US and in Canada. It's primarily through national retailers, but we also partner with a lot of, local municipal programs, HHW programs, and whatnot. And in about 2016, we were constantly getting requests to offer services related to batteries from businesses and other partners. And so in the last 6 or so years, we've taken on a lot of additional related things, such as damaged battery recycling, high watt hour battery recycling. And so I'll talk a little bit about that later on in here. Just a quick review. So currently in the US, there's only 2 states that have rechargeable battery EPR laws that are in place and operating, and that's Minnesota and New York. There are a number of other states that have EPR requirements that are specific to certain chemistries like nickel cadmium or lead acid. Vermont is the only state that has an EPR law specific to single-use batteries. So in Vermont, the recycling of alkaline and lithium metal batteries is free of charge, but everywhere else in the US, there's a fee that the generator of the material has to pay. And lastly, I just mentioned California is obviously, a big state with a big impact, and they recently passed an all battery stewardship law that will, the plan I think is, in about 2 years for that to really kick in. And so there's a lot to be determined between now and then. That, you know, will probably influence the rest of the country and other laws. So if you're familiar with Call to Recycle, you're probably most familiar with the boxes that we've had for decades. And that was our bread and butter. That's what we did, you know, almost exclusively up until about 2016. And these are mailback boxes that allow you to ship mixed batteries in a box through UPS ground. And again, Chris was going through a lot of those regulations around, you know, it has to be under 66 pounds. It has to, you know, you can't mix batteries by chemistry, but this is where Call to Recycle and a number of other programs like the Big Green Box or Battery Solutions have developed and obtained DOT special permits. And these are basically things that go along with the box or the drum that allow you to ship the batteries without having to meet all of those requirements. And in the case that's most familiar to most folks out there, these boxes allow you to ship mixed batteries, and you don't have to put any special labeling on it. The marking that Chris was referring to, all of those necessary markings are already on the boxes. So it just makes recycling batteries a lot easier and more compliant. You know, there's obviously options for recycling more than just boxes at a time. So Call to Recycle and other similar programs have options for, you know, 55-gallon drum shipments of batteries. And like I said, we'll talk about DDR and high watt hour battery recycling in a few minutes. Quick review, just the current state of battery recycling in the US. So, you know, one of our key metrics is what percentage of the population lives within 10 miles of a public drop-off location. And currently we're at about 84% of the US is within 10 miles. And that's important because we get a lot of folks who call our 1-800 phone number or who go on our website and are looking for drop-off locations. And, you know, we want to be able to provide them with a convenient local option. Call to Recycle last year collected a little over 8 million pounds of batteries. I mentioned we have almost about 10,000 public drop-off locations across the US. And you see the mix of chemistries that Call to Recycle is collecting. Clearly, lithium ion is the you know, the biggest topic and has been for a while now, and is only going to get bigger. So that's the most common rechargeable battery chemistry that we see. And single-use batteries, that's another one that has grown a lot in the last 5 or 10 years. Unfortunately, the industry yet hasn't funded alkaline or lithium metal battery recycling yet. So for the vast majority of the public in the US, that's a cost that the generator has to bear. But you know, that's nonetheless, you know, that's a third of the batteries that we're collecting. It shows just how important a lot of the public sees recycling of batteries. So I'm not sure if the audio is going to come through, but I'll just play a quick video to show you when we're talking about safety, what you know, what it really looks like in practice. So I admit I feel a little guilty sometimes showing this video because I know for a lot of the audience at a presentation like this video is kind of what keeps you guys up at night. You know, unfortunately, the topic of safety when it comes to battery recycling is not going away anytime soon. So a couple of notes on this this video. One, you see how they got the battery to go into thermal runaway, and that was with a physical puncture to the cell. When I went to a demonstration about a year ago, where they were demonstrating this and some of the technology to suppress the fire, I learned that actually most of the time when they do a lab test or a demonstration like this, they don't physically puncture the cell. They don't overcharge the battery. All they do to get a lithium battery to go into thermal runaway is they put the battery on a hot plate and they heat it up. And, it's a little, nerve-wracking to know that all it takes is heating a lithium ion battery up to a couple hundred degrees, and the battery, will, go into thermal runaway, just with that. So kind of that's a major issue for us and for our customers. And, when it comes to safety, I said, it's only becoming a bigger issue because we're now seeing batteries in products that never used to have a battery before. There's, battery powered, Jennifer mentioned bicycles. I mean, that you asked me 10, 15 years ago, I never would have expected a high watt hour battery to be in a bicycle. Battery chemistries are hard to identify sometimes. The amount of energy that's stored in batteries is growing as battery prices come down. It becomes more, financially viable to build, a 500 watt hour battery for, a bicycle. Batteries are counterfeited sometimes. We were hearing about batteries being stolen so that they can be repurposed into, fake Sony or fake Dell batteries. And the design of products is making it harder and harder for end users to remove batteries from the device. Even if someone wanted to recycle a battery, sometimes they feel like they can't because they can't get the battery out. So, we're between 2013 and 2020. The stats I have here say that 64 facilities in 28 states experienced almost 250 fires. It says likely caused by, because in these cases, a lot of times it's really hard to know exactly what caused the fire. We had an incident with FedEx back in 2017 where a FedEx truck burned. Luckily, thankfully, the driver was okay. But afterward, all we really knew was our boxes were on that truck, and there really wasn't the ability to determine exactly what caused that fire. So talking about safety and what can be done, education is a big part of it. And first and foremost is, identify, at least for the folks operating the recycling program, is identifying the batteries that are most at risk. And when it comes to which chemistry is the biggest concern, clearly any lithium-based chemistry is the focus. So lithium batteries, whether they're lithium ion, which is rechargeable chemistry, or lithium metal, which is also known as lithium primary or non-rechargeable, those are becoming more and more popular. So a couple of comments here about the non-rechargeable lithium batteries that we're going to see. In most cases, those are the smaller lithium batteries, smaller than lithium ion, and they come in common cell sizes. Things like AA's and AAA's are pretty common. You'll see an Energizer battery that has a reflective, like silver package on it. The coin cell button. So if it looks like a quarter or a dime, it's probably a lithium metal battery. And if the battery says on it anywhere a CR, that's another good indicator that what you've got there is a non-rechargeable lithium battery. For lithium ion batteries, these are the rechargeable batteries. You're going to see there the seal I was mentioning earlier, the RBRC symbol. Those are on most of your main brands, your national, top tier brands, but they're not on every lithium ion battery. So these are the batteries. Think about it. Anything that you would plug into the wall, that's going to be a rechargeable battery. And you're going to look for anything, whether it says lithium ion, LiPo, LIR. Those are indications that the batteries are rechargeable. For our purposes here at Call to Recycle, we just generally refer to any rechargeable lithium as lithium ion. But I just want to call out the lithium polymer that Chris mentioned earlier, those LiPo batteries. Those are batteries that they basically look like a Pop-Tart. They look like they're kind of thin and rectangular, and they look like they have a soft casing, like they don't have a hard plastic casing. And I'm just, we're hearing more and more that, like, if you had to identify one type of battery, it would be a rechargeable lithium polymer battery that is, one you really want to keep an eye on and manage properly, in part because it doesn't have the hard plastic casing to protect it. So when you're putting a bunch of batteries in a drum or a box and it's shifting around in transit, those LiPo batteries, they have the least protection to prevent that physical damage that could cause a thermal runaway. When it comes to the talking with the public, that's another big thing that we talk about. When I got into the battery industry 15 years ago, battery recycling was really a environmental topic. It was about keeping heavy metals out of the groundwater. It was about not having to mine raw materials. But more and more, it's also about safety. And the idea that I always try to convey is that when you handle a battery as a battery, you take the precautions necessary to be safe. If a battery is handled as just, general waste, then you don't. So that's another reason why recycling of batteries is, really important. So some of the messages we try to convey is, one, batteries can and should be recycled. Batteries require special handling. So terminal protection is a big thing. Making sure the batteries, are not physically damaged in transit, and that you don't want to throw batteries in the trash, especially rechargeable batteries, especially, lithium ion batteries. But we have a lot of materials that we've developed. We had a campaign about a little over a year ago in California. We did called Avoid the Spark. And it was about making sure that folks know how to be battery safety smart. And if you go on the Call to Recycle website and you look under the the safety section, you're going to see materials, PDF, flyers, little videos, articles, things like that. If you're looking for content to have a campaign locally where you're at, you feel free to borrow from that material that we have on our website. This gives you an idea here of some of those materials that are on our website. So I talk about high energy batteries. This for us, that magic kind of line, especially on the DOT rules, is 300 watt hours. So Chris already mentioned that amp hours times volts gives you watt hours. And a good rule of thumb is, if you have a battery about the size of a football in volume or bigger, that's when you probably want to make sure that battery is not over 300 watt hours. If it is, it certainly can be recycled. There's options out there to do it. You can ship it as a fully regulated hazardous material shipment, or more and more folks are developing DOT special permits to simplify that. But that good rule of thumb is about the size of like a small kid's football or bigger is when I'm going to start paying extra attention to, what the watt hour rating is on that battery. So e-bikes are probably the biggest category that I can think of for high watt hour batteries. There's a trail by my house. I actually went out for a run this morning out on it. And I tell you, every time I go for a run on this trail, there's an e-bike. Now, every single day I go for a run. That's how many e-bikes are at least around me here outside of Atlanta. And the good news on this is the e-bike industry has already started to take steps to develop an EPR model where certain manufacturers of e-bikes are funding the collection and recycling of e-bike batteries, as of now, primarily through the retailer. So just be aware, if you have someone asking about, hey, what do I do with this e-bike battery? People for Bikes is the industry association that we're working with, but there may be options, depending on what manufacturer it is, for the customer to take that battery back to the retailer, and the retailer will have the capability to ship that battery out for recycling. So damaged, defective, recalled batteries is another topic because the DOT requirements around it. And one of the challenges is there's no real clear definition of what a DDR battery is. Clearly, if a battery is recalled by the manufacturer, that's kind of black and white. It either is or it isn't. If it's damaged or defective is kind of, up to the interpretation of whoever's looking at it. And so the recommendation that we typically give, if you're trying to figure out if a battery is damaged or defective, is number one, is it swollen? So again, you see these LiPo batteries up here. If it blows up like a bag of microwave popcorn, that's definitely a sign it's DDR. If the battery has physical damage to the cell itself, so not just like a cracked plastic casing on a cordless tool battery, but does it look like the cells inside were affected by that physical damage? I would call that DDR. If the battery has water damage, was submerged, something like that, or if the battery has burn marks, any of those are the most common indicators that we recommend folks use. But at the end of the day, I just say, look, if I'm the one making the determination, do I have a good argument in case anyone ever comes back and asks me, why I made the determination I did. And if you identify that you have DDR batteries and you don't have any DDR specific material, then, if you have sand or cat litter, you can put the battery in that and keep it in a cool or dry place. Call to Recycle is not alone. There's a number of other companies out there that offer solutions, but just be aware there are kits and there's technology out there that will help you collect and ship DDR batteries for recycling. So there's kits as small as like a little popcorn tin where you can ship a few pounds at a time, all the way up to 55-gallon drums where you can ship 132 pounds of DDR batteries in a drum on a pallet. And all these solutions that you see right here have DOT permits that allow anyone who has reviewed the safety materials that we include to ship it. You don't need any special hazardous material training to use these kits and to ship the batteries out for recycling. And the last thing I was going to mention, in terms of challenges we're seeing out there, folks collecting batteries, is on the labor side. So, again, Chris mentioned that terminal protection is required for any lithium-based battery, any sealed lead acid-based battery, and any of the higher voltage nickel batteries. So if it's over 9 volts and it's a nickel cadmium or nickel metal hydride, or if it's over 12 volts and it's an alkaline battery, the DOT requires terminal protection. And terminal protection and sorting are two of the biggest labor intensive activities that collection sites are using. So the battery recycling organizations that are out there have solutions that allow you to ship batteries mixed, and you don't have to, require that somebody, looks at every battery and figures out what chemistry it is. And there's even solutions like this, which is relatively new, that allow you to ship batteries without individual terminal protection. So, if there is one takeaway, it's, be aware of the DOT regs that Chris is referring to, but also be aware that there's a lot of innovation in the battery world and the battery recycling world. And there may be options out there that allow you to more efficiently, operate your program. In this case, this is an example where you can ship batteries mixed without individual terminal protection, as long as the batteries are under 300 watt hours and they're not DDR. You can ship them in a drum with this fire suppressant, and you basically layer the batteries. You put a layer of batteries and a layer of fire suppressant, layer of batteries, layer of fire suppressant. And some of the programs that we've worked with, they've told me they were spending 40, hours of labor to package a pallet of batteries. And with solutions like this, they've been able to get that down to a couple of hours. So depending on your labor situation, where you're at, there's options out there that can greatly reduce it and make it more efficient. But like I said, there's a lot of innovation in the battery recycling world right now to make it easier, because we know that batteries are only going to become more and more important in our economy. And Call to Recycle is one of a number of companies out there that are ready to help. And thank you again, Sarah, for the opportunity.
Yes, thanks, Joe. I'm trying to keep an eye on the Q&A, and I'm sorry, it sounds like the chat is disabled for this, but I'm hoping everybody, not just people asking questions, can see the Q&A, and you can click on the answered tab. But I'm going to try to go through a couple while Samantha gets her presentation up. One, Joe, for you is, are there retail kits people or residents can purchase to use in the event they encounter a damaged battery? And I think the answer is yes, they're out there, but they might be a little expensive for households to have on hand. But I'm not familiar with some of the latest products that you or others have. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, the least expensive, recycling kit that I'm aware of is on the order of $80. And, that does include the return shipping. So there's no additional cost. You get everything you need to recycle, a damaged lithium ion battery for about $80. So yeah, whether, consumers are going to buy that to have it on hand is, debatable. But, if they're motivated enough, hopefully they know that there are options there. And, but certainly most of, virtually all of the damaged battery recycling that we do is, with businesses or HHW programs. It's not much directly with consumers, but it is, it is an option for the properly motivated person.
Yeah, and I think I saw a couple questions about this. I know one thing that we tell residents is, if you do have kitty litter or sand, if you're at home and you have a battery that's damaged and you're worried about it, I think also, getting it outside. I think maybe Jennifer and Chris had some advice on that, but I think the main thing is for households to start being aware of it and look at some of those options if they're not able to get a kit, or you can't wait for a kit to come in the mail necessarily if you don't have one on hand and have a damaged battery. So I don't know if any of the speakers want to comment on that, like advice to give households really, or residents if they have a damaged battery.
Well, one point that I'd like to make, if I could, is that we had a lithium polymer battery, and because those batteries tend to be cells stacked together to form one battery. We had one electrical battery that caught on fire, damaged the other cells within the battery, so that one battery caught on fire 3 different times. So once you put a battery out, does not mess. It just means that could mean that the subsequent cells within that battery are now damaged, and it could still be a fire hazard.
Yeah, and one might think it goes without saying, but related to that, Chris, is keeping batteries that you think are damaged away from other batteries, is important, in addition to using the sand or kitty litter and keeping it away from keeping it dry and keeping it cool. We at Call to Recycle work with a number of manufacturers on programs to help their customers ship in, either return to the manufacturer or ship directly to us to recycle batteries that they think are damaged. So, if I personally had a laptop and the battery was swelling or something like that, in addition, like beyond addressing the immediate concerns, I'd probably contact the manufacturer, and the manufacturers out there, in some cases, providing their customers even after warranty with, options.
Thanks. There's one more question I'm going to just mention now, and then I want to hand it off so Samantha has enough time. Someone had a question about the types of tape you should use for terminals, and I know Jennifer piped in. I know the advice I've usually heard is using clear tape is best, and packing tape works. It can really work well for those button ones if you can kind of have a sandwich of long pieces of tape, and then also individual baggies is another option. But I don't know, Joe, if you want to add anything on that, and what Call to Recycle recommends when people are using your kits for a drop off.
Yeah, the clear tape is really a favor to us and to other recyclers, because it allows you to identify what the chemistry is. So believe it or not, recycling, even in 2022, is, it's a human being who stands there and looks at every battery, over 8 million pounds of batteries a year in our case, and has to toss it in the right bin based on how it looks. So, if it's completely wrapped in electrical tape, then it's kind of hard to figure out. So that's why the clear. We advise against Scotch tape, just because Scotch tape doesn't, in our experience, it doesn't stay. Like, by the time it gets to us, that Scotch tape has fallen off. So, the two that we recommend is clear packing tape. Like, if you have a tape gun that you're used to the tape in a box with, that clear tape is really sticky and will stay. So clear packing tape, or a small piece of electrical tape on, one of the terminals, and that will do the job. The other thing is masking tape, which is, I think it's like a paper-based tape, is just not insulative enough, right? It can still kind of conduct electricity a little bit. So clearly that's not as effective as something like clear packing tape or electrical tape that's not going to allow any conduction.
One more quick tape question, then I want to make sure we have enough time for the last presentation. Someone asked, do all batteries need to be taped? And I think the answer is, if it's going into a collection bin, yes, but I'll let you answer that for sure.
Yeah, so there's the DOT requirements, and then there's the program requirements. So the DOT requirements are, if it's a lithium based battery, doesn't matter if it's rechargeable or single use. If it says lithium, yes, needs thermal protection. If it's a seal lead acid battery, like those heavy bricks that come out of backup power supplies, yes. If it's over 12 volts and it's alkaline, which is pretty rare, but yes. And if it's over 9 volts and it's a nickel base, so nickel cadmium, nickel metal hydride, then yes. So, there may be some programs out there that will say, just tape everything, because we don't want to rely on anybody, going through that matrix to figure it out. So it really depends on, your program and who you're recycling with.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Please keep putting questions in the Q&A. We'll keep trying to type answers and also get to some more, but I want to give a chance for Samantha to talk about some of the education that the Recycling Partnership is doing in this area.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Again, so hi, everybody. My name is Samantha Longshore, and I'm a community program manager for the Recycling Partnership. And for those that aren't familiar with the Recycling Partnership, I wanted to share this picture of our core values So these are the things that guide us in our work. And one that really speaks to me is embracing change and driving action. So prior to joining the partnership, I served as the Resource Recovery Program Manager for the city of Milwaukee in Wisconsin. And we're always wearing a lot of hats and trying to do a lot, often with a little, right? I think we all understand and feel that sometimes. And that's why I always love the partnership's position of being able to work with communities all over the country and learn a lot of lessons and then share that information so that we could make change and we could drive action in our community without having to reinvent the wheel. Because again, everyone's already doing so much. So that one really resonates with me because it meant a lot to me then, and it continues to mean a lot to me now. And I'm really happy to be able to share some of those resources with you today. So quickly, a little bit about who we are. So our goal is to make it as easy for households to recycle something as it is to throw away. And this is our goal because 40 million homes in the US can't recycle as easily as they can throw something away. And for those that do have access, they're still putting about 40% of their recyclables in the trash. So we accomplish this by leveraging private dollars as well as state funding, federal funding, to put those dollars to work in communities to improve recycling infrastructure as well as education. So that means increasing access to recycling, increasing capture of recyclables, and then also improving the quality of recyclables by driving down contamination. And we've reached out 60% of the US population so far, and we're really proud of some of these impacts, but we have a lot of work to do. And this is a quick look at some of our various projects, including research and education, infrastructure, MRF grants, all over the country. And in green, you'll see states where we're doing a lot of regional and statewide system change. And that is where most of my role with the partnership exists as well. So we are going to dig in specifically to educating your community about battery recycling, collection, disposal. And I wanted to point out one resource we have is a personal electronics and battery end of life management guide. This is available for free online with a few additional resources, and I'll provide some more information at the end on where you can get a hold of this. But within this guide, there are different collection options to consider, how to fund your program, good record keeping and data evaluation best practices. I know we all love data on this presentation, how to train your staff, how to educate your community, and then also proper handling and preparation of personal electronics and batteries for the public. But today we're just going to focus on this educating your community portion. And I like to show this slide. It's important to remember that people are so very people-y. So sometimes we can get into this negative headspace and assume that our MRF is on fire again because people just don't care. They just don't want to take the time to drop off their batteries, etc. Whatever that reason might be. But that's why I love this quote. What looks like resistance is often a lack of clarity. And if you haven't read the book Switch by Chip and Dan Keith, I really recommend it. I love this quote. When we step back, we might find that people simply don't know what to do and they're making their best guess. So if their home is never caught on fire because of a battery, maybe they don't know that that's a thing that can happen in our trucks and at our facilities if batteries aren't disposed of in a way that's not the same as what they do with almost all of their other household disposables, right? So I try to keep this quote in mind a lot. And we're going to talk about a few different messages that we want to share with the public. But I'm going to do this in 3 different categories because there is a large audience. Most of the people we're trying to reach, they want a 1-second message. They want a single request. Just tell me the thing that I should do or I shouldn't do. I got to go. I got to keep scrolling. Then there is a slightly smaller audience that wants a few more details. They want a 5-second message. And then you have this really small group, we call them the committed. And they'll take all the details. They want the 50-second message. And so there are a lot of messages that we need to get out there about battery collection, disposal, recycling, but not everybody is ready or will accept the same message. So I want to talk about these in a few different ways. So the most important 1-second single request message is no batteries in your recycling or your garbage carts. If you can only catch people for 1 second. That's the main piece of education that we want to bring home for them. And second is take batteries here. And there's a little caveat here because maybe you have a household hazardous waste site that will take all of the batteries, but maybe you have one site that will take, your auto batteries, but another that will take, some of your, your smaller like household disposables, and maybe they can't all go to the same place. So there may be some situations where this isn't a 1 second message. So this is something to kind of consider and where it falls and how much detail to give. But typically these are the two people want. What should I do or shouldn't I do? Okay, and what can I do? For those who want a little bit more detail, who want that 5 second message, we kind of add on to that first message. So no batteries in recycling or garbage carts because they can spark or explode. So you're not only giving them that single request, but you're giving them a reason why so that they understand and they have that motivation behind doing the right thing. And next, don't hold on to them. So again, we've got them for a little bit more time. We want to let them know, don't hang on to batteries. Don't let them sit around your house and age and corrode because then we might have some more danger on our hands, right? So if you can just let them know, hey, those shouldn't be sticking around for a long time, maybe that prompts them to look at where they should be taking them. And now we get into some of these really fun details. These are things that we've been talking a bit about, through this entire session. The first one, is it tough to remove? Okay, then don't try. And this is talking about those embedded batteries and looking at, if it is embedded, if it's tough to get that battery out, maybe we need to look at that entire device and how do we recycle it? Something like cell phones where we're starting to get, those glued batteries inside. And next, talking about taping terminals and bagging each of those batteries if you're going to be transporting them. Again, not everyone's going to be sticking around for all those details about how are we treating batteries. But for those that will listen to that message or those that are responsible for those materials, these are important messages as well. In addition, so we've been talking a lot about kitty litter in the last few minutes. Another reminder, some more details that damaged batteries get kitty litter or sand. So if you do have some of those batteries that may be giving you a more difficult situation, maybe a little less safe, a reminder that they should go in kitty litter and sand. So again, these aren't for everybody. We really want to focus on those single 1 second requests, maybe giving a few more details, and then making sure that we're getting more of those details out and thinking about the type of media and how long people are paying attention to them so that we can get those messages across. And I have one more here. I'm putting at the bottom. You don't have to be a chemist to understand what to do with your batteries. And I don't put that in a category here because I think that's on us. That's how we speak about batteries. It's how we explain batteries and not necessarily using technical terms and phrasing. And we're talking about this a little bit where we're saying, some facilities say, tape them all, bag them all, because they don't want to get into that nitty gritty and really confuse people about different types of batteries and how to prepare them. So again, that's kind of on us and how we talk about and how we explain these things so that everyone does understand and can kind of follow suit as easily as possible. So we're trying to create that clarity. So again, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the personal electronics and battery disposal kit that I mentioned earlier. So you can find this at recyclingpartnership.org/electronics. And here you can download the guide that we talked about, as well as download some social media, an educational video. That video is also on YouTube, really easy to share on social media or put onto your websites. And then you can also customize educational materials. That includes mail and print collateral templates. You can see that postcard in the image below. And this in some of our studies had a really high retention rate. People remembered seeing those. And you can also customize stickers and signage. So a lot of free resources for you to use available there. And before we wrap it up, I just wanted to mention a case study in Chula Vista that we performed. And the campaign goals were to inform the public about fire and explosion hazards of batteries and personal electronics and to provide information on safe disposal and recycling options. So again, our key messages are 1-second messages. And this campaign ran November of 2020 through January 2021. And some of the tools that we used were the mailer that you saw in that previous photo. The website hosted information, not only about what to do, what not to do, but where to take those batteries. There were social media posts, and you can see some of the really fantastic metrics in the bottom right there. There was a press release, and then also some of those free tools were used for digital ads and bus ads. And we saw great results here. There was a survey before the campaign and after, and actually the survey found that there was a pretty high level of knowledge before coming in, but that knowledge increased even further after that campaign. We found that the mailer had the highest recall. Everyone really remembered getting that postcard that said, hey, don't put batteries in your cart because they may spark or explode. And the best result here, especially, is that at the household hazardous waste site, the collection of batteries went up 2 to 3 times compared to the previous year. So that really showed that it was effective, whether people had been putting them in carts or maybe just leaving them around their house in the junk drawer. They were now equipped with that knowledge and need to take those in to the household hazardous waste site. So that was really effective. So now I think we'll open it up for some questions and some feedback for the group, but thank you everyone for having me.
Yes, thank you very much to Samantha and all of our speakers. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to try to get through a few of these questions quick. And please do, again, I think people can see the Q&A and look at the answer to see some of these other answers in here. One quick one on taping. Should we tape car battery terminals? And I believe, Joe, you said the answer is yes for DOT rules. I think I've also seen sites that will stack them on pallets with cardboard in between, but I don't know, Chris or Joe, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, so Call to Recycle doesn't collect car batteries per se, but in my prior role, I did work with car batteries, and exactly what you said, Sarah. I think most folks, put them on pallets, and then you put that like inch thick corrugated cardboard in between each layer, and that'll protect the batteries. So yeah, I think car batteries are always going to be recycled in kind of on a pallet. So that's the most common way that I've seen that.
And there's another one here. Please provide recommendations for temporary storage of DDR batteries at a household hazardous waste facility, especially metal or plastic pails. So especially if maybe you don't have a kit on hand, any recommendations from Chris or Joe on that, on temporary storage?
Always metal if you can. I think that the cell block material that Call to Recycle sells, if you need to use that material, anecdotally, what I heard is that the plastic containers will actually melt before the cell block activates. When in doubt, if you have DDR batteries, my opinion is always use a metal container.
Yeah, I can't speak to the melting points, but I do know that the containers we use for DDR are, I'm pretty sure they're all metal. So, yeah, and then I think we've mentioned before about the media that we recommend. Some folks maybe aren't looking to have an entire recycling kit on hand. So this fire suppressant, there's fire suppressant out there meant specifically for lithium ion batteries, where you can just purchase the fire suppressant by itself without the whole recycling kit along with that, if that's what your preference is.
I'm going to go on a small tangent when it comes going back to the lead acid battery thing, more of a public service announcement. Lead acid batteries, when you recycle them, you can get probably $2-3 a battery for as a commodity in the market. There are new batteries coming on the market, lithium iron phosphate batteries that look like a lead acid battery. And then those most recent quote I got for disposal of those is right around the $10, $12, $15 mark. So if you're not cognizant of what's coming into your facility, a $2 to $3 revenue can turn into a $10 to $15 expense. So I guess more of a Right now, they're at a price point where they're not going to be available to everybody. But eventually through production and technology, the price points can be driven down to where they will become more prevalent. And that will be one of the next issues that I think people are going to have to worry about when it comes to battery recycling.
All right, I'm gonna try to get in a couple more. We've had a couple questions about, how heat and freezing affects batteries. So especially like electronics or batteries left out, on your car dash or something, or whether freezing would change the hazards, places like ours in colder climates, maybe where you're storing outdoors. Any thoughts on how temperature extremes can affect batteries?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any impacts of cold weather on battery recycling. Cold weather can certainly affect battery performance, but when it comes to recycling, I can't think of any issues brought up specifically about that. It's really the heat. That's really, what you want to, prevent, not just when you're trying to, have a battery perform well, but avoid a thermal event. Like I said, if the heat gets intense enough, that's all it takes to get even a normal battery, a battery that's not DDR, to go into thermal runaway if you get to a couple hundred degrees.
I've got a couple more questions that are good, but could have much longer discussions. But I'm just going to mention these and see if any of you have quick things to say, or maybe can offer other resources. One is about what to do with vaping devices that still have batteries and also contain vaping chemicals. And I know that is a very thorny issue. And then there's another one about what folks can advise residents if they don't have a call to recycle site nearby. They don't know if drop-offs nearby, and maybe their waste hauler won't accept batteries. So I don't know if any of you want to try to tackle either of those briefly, and otherwise I'm sure any of our speakers are happy to have follow-up conversations with folks that want to talk more about these issues too.
Yeah, on vape devices, I call the recycle, and I think most battery recyclers out there can certainly handle smaller quantities of vape devices. If you're talking about 2,000 pounds of just vape devices, then we probably got to figure something out. But if it's a handful, that the batteries are in these thin aluminum shells or steel cases that can go into the shredder just like a normal battery can. The big thing is making sure there's no nicotine in there, because if the nicotine's in there, that's a controlled substance, and that changes the whole ball game. So you want to make sure there's no nicotine in what you get. And in terms of if there's no call to recycle drop off location, Batteries Plus is a national retailer that doesn't work with call to recycle. And I'm pretty sure they would take back a lot of different types of batteries from the public. So maybe they have an option locally. And there are consumer mailback kits, that are for a fee, but they are out there from other folks for smaller quantities.
I wanted to add in that was oh, go ahead.
I'll say I have a whole nother slide up for that question, knowing that question would come into play. I think a lot of it all depends upon what your state rules are. If you have a state that follows the federal rules exempt residential and BSQG or CSQG materials from cradle to grave. If you're a state like Wisconsin, where that material is sorted out and brought to a facility, sorted out of the municipal waste stream, brought to a facility regulated under your HSW program, now you have to do waste determination. And you have to treat that material as a hazardous waste. At that point for our facility, we throw out the universal waste rules. We don't benefit from that relaxed regulation. And because of the P075, the nicotine, the battery component, and the electronics component, we have found the best way alternative for that, unfortunately, is just to send those off for incineration. Do not benefit like failing universal waste rules. But it has to be a company that owns their own incinerators, like a Veolia. I think Clean Harbors might. To me, I found that to be the best option. We tried educating our public on to create a collection program. It's just, right now, it seems like it's just easier for the residents to throw those in the trash. They're kind of akin to battery contained devices, where if your state doesn't have an e-waste program, many of those devices are, even if it does have an e-waste program, many of those products are exempt, are not part of the landfill ban. So now you get into this pull and push and pull thing. Do you accept materials and then have to deal with the hazardous waste component of it in vaping materials, or you just say, hey, we don't want them, throw them in the trash, and then have to deal with the fire components in your landfill or at your transfer station. So that's could be a whole different presentation in itself.
Yeah, we worked out a method with Veolia, and because of the PO 75, that's exactly what we do is we send them for incineration. And that way you don't have to worry if there's a cartridge on it and mess with that and get all sticky. And I don't recommend taking them apart at all. I did that myself. I took apart 35 of them and I'll never do that again, but I wanted to learn. They sparked, they don't shut off. One went into thermal runaway. I wouldn't take apart any embedded battery device. And I think Samantha mentioned that too.
And you have to layer them so that they don't activate in transport. So that means probably layering them between vermiculite, a layer of vaping devices, vermiculite. And then you have minimum drum quantities and pricing that can get kind of expensive, which why most programs just say don't even want to accept them, have it exempted through the trash, but then you're on that risk of fires at your facility.
Well, the other problem is to get around the flavor option and to still sell that stuff to kids. They've gone with disposable. So you can have that flavoring thing as long as it isn't a separate cartridge. And so manufacturers amped up the battery power and they added plenty of nicotine. They're roughly equivalent to a pack of cigarettes. And it says right on them disposable. And that is super unfortunate.
All right, we're past our time now, and I know we could talk about vaping devices alone for quite a bit longer. There are a few other good questions in the chat, so I just encourage you, if we weren't able to answer your question, to follow up with the speakers and get some more information. There's a lot of really great resources, especially on the Recycling Partnership and Call to Recycle web pages that may answer some of your questions as well. Thank you so much to all our speakers for joining us, and to Jennifer and all the folks at NAHMMA for all their hard work to put this together. Again, the presentation slides will be available afterward, but do please follow up with any of us if you have additional questions, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. The webinar will be available on site. I don't know about the actual presentations.
Okay, we can certainly get those slides to people if they aren't posted and you want them. Just feel free to email.
Yeah, I noted they're probably going to have to be a PDF because they're so huge, which is fine. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.